Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bumping My Gums. Obviously, I'm not my wife. I'm stepping in for her today. In light of some of the events going on, my wife thought it would be a good opportunity to hear from a group of African American men. She asked me would I mind doing it. So I reached out to the brethren that I think are a diverse group of guys and some different phases in life, and I think we can have some conversation over what's going on. Them to introduce themselves, I'll start with myself. My name is Mikkel. I'm a Dorla, your normal host. I'm her husband. We celebrated our 14th anniversary earlier last week, I guess I should say now. And
congratulations!
Thanks, appreciate that.
Beautiful.
No kids. I currently do financial operations for a local student loan company, private student loans. That's what I do for a living. And I'll get over to you guys. Louis?
Yeah, I'm Louis. I'm in Pittsburgh. I work at a small analytics company. I'm a business analyst and a software designer. I got married in 1999. I have three. Yeah, I got three children.
Right, DeAndre, who I like to refer to as Dr. Dre.
Hey guys, as Mikkel said, I'm DeAndre. A lot of people do call me Dre. I am a physical therapist at a large hospital-based outpatient physical therapy facility. I've been married for coming up on 15 years, and we have two kids, two young boys. We have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old.
All right, Kyle.
Well, my name is Kyle. I live in Hightstown, New Jersey. It's a small town in Mercer County, not far from, actually at the tip of Mercer County, not far from New Brunswick. I'm about 15-20 minutes from New Brunswick, 15-20 minutes from Princeton, 15-20 minutes from Freehold in any different direction, east, west, north, or south, and about 15-20 minutes from Trenton. So kind of in the middle of that. I'm a worker for Child Protective Services for the state of New Jersey Department of Children and Families. And what else? Anything else?
No kids for you either.
Yeah, no, I don't have any children. I've been married since 2016. So it'll be 4 years and in December.
Desmond?
Sure. Hello, guys. My name is Desmond. I am from Philly, PA. And I am a teacher's assistant or a collaborating teacher at a independent school. I will also be a senior next year, a college senior next year. And I'm also single and I have no kids.
Cool, thanks, brother. But I thought the first place we could start is right. This week, or last week, whenever it was, I think it was early last week. When I first saw the video of George Floyd, that thing kind of hit me like a brick. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is where we are, and that was kind of my thought. I was wondering, each of you, what did you think when you saw the video, and what were the thoughts in your mind? I'll start from the youngest, Desmond. What did you think?
Yeah, when I saw the video, I was really just shocked. I was disappointed. I felt angry too, and it was also traumatizing. In the video, you see George Floyd, he's calling for his mom, and then it gets to a point where you see his bulging arteries. So literally, we're watching him dying on the tape, and just to see that, that was really that was traumatizing.
Yeah, and just like the Ahmaud Arbery video, I couldn't watch the full thing. I watched enough to get to the point, but I'm not to watching people die in front of me, but
Mm-hmm.
I watched enough where it still had that impact.
Mm-hmm.
Lois, what was your thoughts?
Frankly, like I don't watch these videos when they come out. Like I'll read the stories and I'll look at stills, but I don't want to see the videos. I mean, I'm shocked and I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm outraged, but at the same time, like, how many times have we seen this? Like, how many unarmed African American men in particular, but really just Black people, have we seen assaulted by the state, murdered by the state? And then you have like this flood of emotions because you know in your heart that nothing's probably going to come of it. Like, these guys are probably going to, they did arrest one of them. The still that I saw, the one cop who got arrested, the one who had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, he got arrested. But in another angle, two of those other three cops were also kneeling on him, and they're not arrested. And the casualness with which, I don't recall the officer's name, but the casualness with which he did it, like he's got his hands in his pocket.
Lois,
like,
I was going to say, there's
like,
nothing more casual than having your hands in your pocket.
Yeah, like it's I don't know, man. It's traumatizing, and it's I have a young Black son. He's 26. He's in Philly, and it's just, I worry about myself, but I worry more so about younger people.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's difficult. It's difficult to see. It's difficult to talk about.
That's I'm gonna come back to that, Lois. That's one of the things I actually have here for you as having a young African American son. So I'll come back to you on that in a bit. What was your take?
So I would say, I was saying I'm much more like Lewis. I don't watch the whole thing because I am very strategic about what I allow myself to see and hear. But I also want to make sure that I'm not ignorant. So I want to make sure that I know all the facts that are going on. And I'm not going to sit and watch it again and again and again. And so this whole moment definitely elicits all kinds of emotions from, disappointment, like Desmond said, and even just, I think anger is part of it too. The anger is a lot of different reasons. One, it keeps happening again, like Lewis said. This is not the first time that someone said, I can't breathe, and then the person continues anyway. And I think the anger also comes in, you have someone like Dylan Roof, who shoots up a whole church, assassinates 9 or so members in Charleston, South Carolina, and he's taken into custody with no issues. They feed the man, gave him a Happy Meal. And here we go with Mr. Floyd. All he's trying to do, I actually heard 2 different reports. One report said a forgery of a check. Another report said a counterfeit $20 bill. So I'm not sure which one it is. But either way, there's nothing that warrants this type of force for whichever you want to call it. So I think the anger is that. And then I think the anger also is that not only do these things happen, but they happen and there's no recourse. There's nothing that happens to the officers. So I think that's part of the anger. And then, part of it too is I'm feeling love too. I want to say that I'm feeling love. So I've been, ever since, the last few weeks, I've been posting stuff on Facebook just to let people know, hey, this is what's going on. And I'm not just hearing from my Black brothers and sisters. I'm hearing from my white brothers and sisters as well. So there's been an outpouring of love during the situation as well.
Kyle, you can come up. What's your thoughts?
Just to kind of echo what all the brothers were saying. I looked at it and I was just like, here we go again. I mean, how many times does this type of thing have to happen? And kind of what I'm sure a lot of you brothers kind of did, whereas I, as far as not being able to watch the video, I did watch the video in its entirety one time. After that, it's traumatizing, kind of what, like, to coincide with what Desmond said. And I internalized it. I put myself in that situation because there's been situations where you have these interactions with law enforcement, and you think to yourself, man, well, how would I react in that situation? And a lot of times with these situations, it's easy for people to just kind of parse it off like, oh well, if he would have just did what the police was telling him to do. Well, even when we're as compliant as possible, this still happens. So it's heartbreaking to just witness another black man just brutally murdered in the street like an animal. So and I think that whole part of that whole animalistic piece kind of just goes back to what Lewis was saying and with the about him just sitting there with his hands in his pockets, like it's a casual thing, like, oh, I got a human life underneath the full weight of my body. I'm not a small man. I got my whole weight on this man's neck, and I'm just gonna casually sit here with my hands in my pockets like it's nothing. And so that was that was the thing that hit me. It hit me hard. Like, wow, our lives as black men is not worth. It's less than an animal at this point. So those were kind of the feelings going on, going through my head when I saw the video.
So yeah, Kyle. So two quick thoughts to that. You said less than an animal, right? So if you took that same situation, someone was had their knee on an animal, you named the breed of dog. The dog was restrained, and they proceeded to break the dog's neck, or
yes, outrage.
Dog, there would be outrage.
Oh
outrage.
my gosh, what? No, I mean it would be. Yeah,
it wouldn't matter if the dog had just chased his kid, or if the dog had did whatever. He would have been arrested. The second thing you said is it could have been me, and so Lewis, I'm gonna come to you next on this one. I think I often put myself in the situation. And it just reminds me of situations I've been in throughout my life. The most traumatizing of which I hardly ever shared. But back in 2001, I was on my way to Shaw's homecoming, about 20 minutes outside of Henderson, North Carolina. So I was in North Carolina. Got pulled over for speeding. I guess I was a little nervous, and I must have been shifting in between my hip. But for whatever reason, the state trooper thought I had a gun that I was trying to conceal. And he said, "Would you mind if I search you?" First thought that went to my head, Mikkel, don't move, right? So I stayed still. I said, "Officer, I do not have a gun. But if you will feel more comfortable, I am more than willing to let you look." So then he goes, "Okay, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience." He said, "But I can't search for a gun by myself, so I'll have to call someone else to assist me in the search." And so I said, "You have to call backup?" He said, No, not backup. Someone to witness the search. "Officer, if that makes you feel better, I'm more than willing to wait. I'm on my way to my college homecoming. I'm more than willing to wait for that." Second officer comes. They search the car. I don't have a gun. They quickly realized that I don't have a gun. And I was just fortunate, right? The officer was apologetic because I killed them with kindness. But I used to think, and I thought at that time, Mikkel, if you just be yourself, if you just be nice, my power is my personality, you personality them to death, you'll make it out alive. But I realized over the years, it's no longer my thought, right? Because it doesn't matter your reaction. What matters is their reaction. And I remember to this day, I had sweatpants on and I had a drawstring, and I was simply like moving on this drawstring. He could have just shot me, right? I thought he was reaching for a weapon, so I shot him, And that stays with me to this day. It's really by God's grace that I made it out of the situation. So I usually come back to that. What is our response? So Lewis, as having a father of a mid-20s African American man, most people think of the talk as the birds in the bee. As Black men, we have to have the talk. How do you handle a peace interaction? Lewis, have you had that talk? What do you tell your son?
Yeah, of course I've had that talk. But before I touch on that, I wanted to ask you something that I think I know the answer to. But in North Carolina is an open carry state, right?
Yes.
I was gonna mention that too.
So you having a gun, like
I was gonna mention that too.
Theoretically, every citizen, every person in North Carolina could have a gun. Like, I mean,
and I piled it on, Lewis. I said, I'm graduate Shaw. I'm a year into my graduate degree. So, he was very, fortunately, this person actually he actually felt bad. I could see him. He felt bad.
Not bad enough to do the right thing, though.
Exactly. Not bad enough to do the right thing. The backup ended up being a Black woman county cop. So I initially felt like, okay, well, she's Black, but she's a Black cop. So I don't know what that will mean. We all heard the KRS-One song, Black Cop, except Desmond's a little younger. So I wasn't sure what to expect. They searched my trunk, searched behind both of my seats. Asked them, did they need to fill in the person? They just said, would they mind if I patted my pockets? They patted my pockets. They didn't make me spread or anything, but said, do you mind if I just pat your pockets? And they got comfort that there was no gun. And they ended up giving me a ticket because I was legitimately 50.
Sure.
And they said, you know what, just go. And we're but I often think how it went left.
Right. So the thing about it, and like the difficult thing about those kind of conversations is, especially when you're raising boys trying to make them men, like you have all these conversations about how a man is supposed to conduct themselves, and you carry yourself with dignity, and you respect yourself so that other people will respect you. But to be quite frank, when you're dealing with police and you're dealing with a situation that could conceivably result in you not going home ever, it's emasculating. Like, you really have to, like, you have these rights, or you're supposed to have these rights, but you have to eat them. You have a certain standard with which you expect people to deal with you because that's the way you deal with people, but you got to eat that, right? And that's like, to be frank, like, it sucks to have to tell your child that you have to do these things so you don't die. Yeah. So I don't know a Black father with sons, especially from teenage on up, who hasn't had these conversations and who doesn't hate the fact that they had to have these conversations, because it's contradictory to all the things that you tell your child about how to conduct themselves. So it's whack.
Yeah. So Dre, as the father of two males under 10, when they see these videos, do they have questions, or do you talk to them about this, or do they come to you with any questions that they've heard?
Yeah, absolutely. What we're learning is that you have to talk to them about it at the home, because if not, they're definitely going to hear it in the school. So, and the timeline that we have is always 2 years behind the way we think it's supposed to happen. We think, oh, they're not going to talk about that until at least 2 more grades. No, they're talking about it now. So now, as parents, we have to talk to them and educate them on on things. And I like how Lewis said it, is it sucks. It's not anything that you want to have to tell your boys. And I got two boys, it's a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, but it's absolutely essential that we have these talks. So we just had a big talk just this morning about what's going on in the world. And we started back with slavery. We went from slavery to Jim Crow to, we hit it all to put it in perspective of what's going on right now. And I guess the disheartening part about it is there's a little bit of a stolen innocence when it comes down to that, because these guys are walking around. Listen, my 4-year-old, he loves cops. He loves police. Every single police he passes, he wants to stop and say, "Hey, Mr. Police, hey, Mr. Cop, hey, officer." He just loves it. He wants to be a cop when he grows up. And so even him hearing this morning about how a cop kneeled on somebody else and killed him, like you could just see it, just kind of like his whole spirits were crushed. And so what I had to do is I had to show, listen, it's not all cops. It's not all cops that are doing this. And so in order to cheer him up, I actually had to show him, look, these are good cops doing good things. I showed him pictures of cops that were protesting with people just this weekend. I showed him, videos of good cops doing good things, because on one hand, this is tough. I need to instill the message that you have to watch who you hang around. You have to watch who you're with. You have to watch how you conduct yourself. But at the same time, I don't want you getting so cynical or jaded that you think that everything is bad. So you want to educate them, but not to the point where they're walking around pissed off at everybody. So it's a tough but necessary talk to have, and we're learning we have to have it earlier and earlier.
Mm-hmm. So Desmond, as a young man, have you had any experiences with a police officer, or any situations of outright racism that you've experienced through? Now, to give perspective, you turned 21 about 3 or 4 weeks ago. What is your perspective as a young African American now?
I mean, God willing, I haven't experienced any type of racism with police or with people at school, stuff like that. But I think the reason why I haven't is because of the fact that I really don't hang around other people that much. And, I have a mom, I don't have a father. And so my main focus really is schoolwork, and really, trying to do my best, all the time. And, I've had these conversations with my mom, the talk. And so, I just put God first. Every time I go outside, I pray. Every time, I'm around others, I always have a song of praise. And I really love this song called "The Blessing" by Elevation Worship. Don't know if you guys know that, but but that's been really like, it came out, it recently came out, but at the same time, it applies for protection. And so that's been my main go-to, with all of these current events and things like that. But like I said, no, I haven't experienced racism. That doesn't mean that I probably won't, in the future. But I am taking, the necessary precautions that are necessary. And, I think also being in an independent school too, and they really value diversity. They really value, different cultures. They talk about difference, from a very young age, with pre-Kers and stuff like that. So, it is a good foundation. And, most of the faculty, they want to do the work, for the most part. And so, I think the environment too has also been a good thing.
Good. Thanks, Desmond. I'm writing down in my notebook that's something you and I will chat about. From the time Desmond's been a young man up until 21, been been very active in his life, and he comes down, and he's going to be the guy that takes care of me when I get old. I tell him that all the time. And we've had all sort of conversations, and this will be our next one. Kyle, one thing I thought interesting about you is you've been a Black male in on the East Coast. Obviously, you're from Delaware. Currently live in Jersey. You've lived in Ohio, in the Midwest, and you spent 4 or 5 years in Nashville, the South. So, having been in the East, West, and the South as a Black male, have you observed any differences, or what are your takes in the various areas? Same song everywhere, or is there you picked up along the way?
It's I'm glad you asked me this, because that was going to be one of the things that I wanted to touch on. So I was watching CNN last night, and I'm watching all of this stuff going on, all these riots, and several of them were taking place in cities where I have resided. So there was this huge thing down in Richmond. I lived in Richmond for over 10 years, went to college down there, had interactions with police in Richmond, lived in Nashville. They really did a number on Nashville last night. Had some interaction with law enforcement in Nashville as well. Never really had any interaction with law enforcement in Ohio, but Ohio, though it's Midwest, Ohio has kind of some of those Midwest states, Ohio, Indiana, they kind of have a southernness to them, even though they're kind of like Midwest and like up there, way up north by Canada. But they have some southern qualities, so to speak, as far as kind of like how what the atmosphere is like there. And now being here in New Jersey, truthfully, I would say it's kind of par for the course in each of these states. One experience I had with law enforcement in Nashville, and I wanted to mention this because this was one of the things that I immediately thought about when I saw this whole situation, this current situation first go down. So I was on my lunch break, and I worked for the state, and when I lived in Nashville as well, I worked for the state of Tennessee. Like now, I work for the state of New Jersey. So I was working for the state, different division and all that, completely different job and everything. But I went out on my lunch break one day, and I didn't realize, I don't know if maybe I got over without signaling or something like that, and I didn't see the police officer behind me. So I pulled in to, I saw the lights go on. I saw, man, what did I do? I pulled into the parking lot, actually where I was going. I was going to grab some lunch. And the officer, I'm just sitting there waiting for the guy to come up. And he was a young white officer. Looked like he was probably fresh out of the academy or something. But the one thing I noticed, and I was totally, it was broad daylight, not in the, noticing everything that happens. I'm like, all right, well, it's a lot of people around. It's broad daylight. I'm okay. Not really, but I'm like, all right, I'm cool. So the guy comes, and I can already hear his voice is cracking. And when I go to give him my license and registration, his hands are shaking. And I'm like, this guy is scared to death right now. And mind you, I'm in button up, and I will always wear a shirt and tie to work. Button up shirt, tie, slacks, broad daylight. We're in a populated area. It's not the middle of the night. I wasn't blasting music. I don't have on a hoodie or a do-rag I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm wearing a shirt and tie, and this guy is still scared to death. I mean, his hands, I want to get this in the camera. His hands were shaking. His voice was trembling. I was like, oh my gosh, let me hurry up and get out of here before he get like an itchy trigger finger or something. So it ended up being, ended up being nothing. I don't even think I got a ticket. I think he gave me a warning, but just the simple fact that he was that afraid of a black man with wearing a shirt and tie in the middle of the day at like 2:00 in the 1:00, 2:00 in the afternoon. It just made me think, man, what's going to happen when this guy pulls over a black dude at night,
Right.
or a black dude that is blasting music, or is wearing sunglasses, or does have on a hoodie, or dreads, or a hoodie, any of those type of things, it
Normal
could spell.
things.
Yeah.
Any of those
Yeah,
normal
exactly.
things.
Normal things. It could spell disaster.
Yeah.
Just for being a black man. So that was one thing that I experienced while I was in Tennessee, that that really was like, oh my goodness, this is definitely a problem, because who knows how many other officers in any other states or cities or whatever the case that are the same way, and are so unsure and so afraid of black and brown men and women, that these type of things end up happening. And then oh, I felt threatened. Well, how did you feel threatened, sir? I'm wearing a shirt and tie. It's the middle of the day. I'm just going to go get some lunch. How are you threatened? I feel threatened. You're shaking. I'm afraid, because you might do something drastic. But I can't. So I can't be afraid. I can't feel threatened.
Can't move.
So
I was very nervous. My hand was shaking. Can't move. Made them think I was reaching for a gun.
Exactly. And again, in Tennessee, much like North Carolina, huge gun culture. A lot of concealed carry. A lot of people have concealed carry. So one of the first questions that they ask you in Nashville, when they pull you over, is, if you give them your license and registration, they ask you if you have a concealed weapons permit. If they see that, they ask where your weapon is. So I did not have a concealed weapons permit, didn't have any weapons or anything like that. So I guess that kind of put him at ease a little bit, but he still was, dude was shook, man. I couldn't believe. I was like, I cannot believe this. This is insane. This guy is scared to death. So yeah.
So it's funny Lewis said normal things, right? Because it reminds me of the things we have to do as African American men. Kyle will attest to this. I was never allowed to own a hoodie. My mom always said, "You're over 60 heavy set, you're dark skinned. That's the trifecta, right?
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is stand up and you're a threat."
Mm-hmm.
I bought my first hoodie at 41. I never had a hoodie throughout school, throughout college. And college is very popular. You get your school with the hoodie, but it was so ingrained in my head that I've never owned one, never desired to own it. And I just, my very well-meaning mom was just saying, Mikkel, you have to protect yourself. A lot of people know I went to Salesianum. I was one of 7 blacks in my graduating class, 41, and it was 22 when the school they had enrollment of 1,001. So, which is ultimately how I ended up at HBCU. But her point was, you, by no intention of your own, are a threat, right? So for me, what I do this to this day, I probably do it every day at work. I view myself as having 30 seconds to a minute to disarm people when they talk to me. When I just say hello, just walking up to you can be scary, right? So I need to when I'm going to say, I need to disarm you, because if you're scared, you're not going to hear what I have to say. If you're uncomfortable, you're not going to hear what I have to say. And I've gotten really, really good at it, right? Because that's how I've spent my whole entire career. So, I go in, first corporate job I got at Chase, working in finance. The CFO interviews me. I notice his eagles on the wall. I immediately said, oh, wow. I went and saw them play with True Love. I would go to, with a collection of friends, I would go see games on the road. I told them he had the Eagles. I said, oh, I just saw them play in Dallas. He ironically saw them and said, oh, wow. Whole script change, right?
Different.
And from there, I told people I got this job because I got means to go see the Eagles play in Dallas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we spent the next 20 minutes talking about it. The whole level changed, right? It was like, this is a good black dude. And
one of the good ones.
This isn't to speak negative.
One of the good ones, exactly.
He ended up being a key person, but it doesn't change the fact that I saw the whole comfort level come down.
Mm-hmm.
To, wow, let's now conversate. And you know how they say most jobs are not, of course, or who you know, or who's that. I know how to play the game, right? I know how to drop where I went to school. I know how to drop who I knew, and I knew these things because it brings people down and able to see me as a person and not as a 6'2", 95-pound threatening guy walking their way, right? And so I've gotten that verse in doing that. And that's not to say I control the situation, because I don't. It could be a knucklehead like that cop in Minnesota. No nicety would have helped that. I realize that. I'm not naive enough not to know that, but I also do my part. So now, as these things are going on, how do you handle these conversations? Do you talk about these things at work? Do people ask you about it? I'll start off. No, I avoid them at all costs. I remember back in '91 during the LA riots. So I've been dealing with this stuff for a long time. So I was a freshman in high school, Louisiana. I was in a pre-calculus class. I was the only African American, and from that point, I marked that as the day I became the spokesperson for Black America. But that day, we're not going to do math, the teacher, they was we're not going to do math. Let's talk about what's going on. I kid you not. I was the next to the last person in the row. The entire class turned and looked at me. I'm 15 years old. Entire class kind of looked at me. And so I have to, here's how I think. Don't condone the LA riots. No, Reginald Dempsey didn't deserve to get pulled out of his truck. No, not justified that they did this and they did that. And then we had a conversation. But from that point, I've always been in situations where there's not necessarily a lot of me, a lot of people that look like me, and I've kind of been put into the spot of having to speak, on behalf of my people. So now I try to avoid those things. I'm not necessarily comfortable talking about that. Dr. Dre, how do you handle that? Do you ask you about that?
Right. So I would say I would divide my work up into two different groups. So as a physical therapist, I have patients, but then I have coworkers. And actually, I'm the manager at my clinic, so I have my patients, and I have those who work under me. So with my patients, it really depends on what they bring up. If my patients bring it up, we're gonna talk about it. If I feel as though they are just adamantly against what my feelings are, I'm not going to sit there and debate them, mainly because they're there to get better. So in order for them to get better, sometimes it's just about them having a connection with you, right? So at some point in time, I just have to say, okay, well, that's how you feel. Okay, now that you've stated that, okay, that's that. I remember there was one guy, we had great conversation. He was adamantly against, he was a white guy, adamantly against Black Lives Matter. And but he wanted to talk about it, but he wanted to have an open, honest discussion. So I'm like, you know what? You want to have an open, honest discussion? Let's talk about it. But I don't do that with every patient. I need to make sure that I'm picking and choosing who we're talking about with. So, this guy was from Baltimore, and he kept on bringing up, what was done to him as a white man in Baltimore and how he had prejudice against him. And for that reason, it's all lives matter, not just Black lives matter. And, so I tried to educate the man and try to break down things like, listen, you can love good air quality. Do you like good air quality? I like good air quality. All right, cool. We on the same page. But do you like bad air quality? No, you don't. Well, I don't either. So we can both like good air quality and not like bad air quality, but still like air, right? And it's the same thing with cops. We can love cops and like cops, but we don't like bad cops. It's really simple. And so, I'm starting to talk to him about things like this. And man, this guy wants to debate it left and right and all this. And so with him, yeah, I talked about it. For most, no, I don't. And then you have my colleagues or those who are working for me. I think some people are some people play dumb or some people act ignorant of what's going on. And so if that's what they want to do, I'm not gonna go into it with them, And some people will bring it up, But I feel like a lot of people, I shouldn't say play dumb. That's not nice. I think a lot of people will very specifically choose not to bring things up because they just don't want to talk about it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Gotcha. For me, I tend to avoid it unless people bring it up. I'm fortunate. I work for a CFO. He's one of the most interesting men I've ever met. So he went to college at Cornell. He was the editor for their conservative newspaper. He was, I kid you not, he succeeded Ann Coulter, and he was succeeded by Laura Ingraham. And he is one, I kid you not. This is he loves to talk politics. One of the most interesting people because he's political, but he also has a Black son that he adopted from an infant. So he's one of the most interesting people to ever talk to. So him and I dialogue all the time. He's not a Trump fan. He's free thinking, unlike most people who tend to be on that side of the ledger. Outside of that, I tend to avoid conversations because I don't want to feel that anger within it. You come to work. Lewis, man, what do you think about this? What do you think about this Floyd situation?
Let me stop you right there. So, fortunately, I work with a lot of foreign nationals. So, like, my team is filled with Pakistanis and Indians and Chinese people. So, we don't have a lot of like even the political conversations at work are typically race conversations. So we don't normally have those kind of conversations. I have had them in the past, but as I get older and less adept at holding my tongue, for my families, they've grown used to living indoors and having food and cable and electricity and all that good stuff. I really don't do personal stuff at work, man. Like I'm cordial and I'm friendly and we can small talk, but we're not going to talk about my family. Everybody's great. You know what I mean? They're all great. Thanks. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to be your Black friend. I don't want to be your friend. Honestly, respectfully, I don't want to be your friend. So like I just I push that stuff to the side.
That's my wife's approach.
No thanks. I don't want to have this conversation.
Said, no, I don't want to be your friend. I'm not interested.
I'm everyone's friend. My wife's like, you're the friendly one. Everyone loves Mikhail.
Yeah,
so
they don't love me.
So when we go out, like the CFO I just mentioned, he'll invite me out with him and his wife, and go to dinner the whole nine. My wife's always like, what are the things I'm supposed to say? What should I avoid? With that and that.
Wait, did you just say you go out with them?
I would go out to dinner. He's a good guy. He's a good person. He's been good. He's
That's what's up, Mikhail.
He's based on the person you are. He's a phenomenal person. But my wife is more of deuces. We'll talk Monday morning. You know, Monday morning conversation. How was your weekend? It was fine.
Yeah, I have headphones on all the time. Like in the pre-Bluetooth days, like I would have like the cord just hanging, like it wouldn't even plugged in or nothing. Like I have these headphones on. I don't want to talk. Not talking.
So Kyle, do you talk about these things at work? Are you asked about these things?
You know,
Kyle, what do you think about this whole Floyd situation?
My work experience is probably a little different. All right, so it's a huge difference now from when I was living, and so I'll answer that question by saying when I was living in Nashville, no, because I didn't want to despise all of my coworkers because I worked in a very white environment in Nashville, a very Republican environment in Nashville. So though they were very, very, very nice people, I got along with everyone, and the African Americans that were in our office it was like a family because we kind of stuck together because it was a predominantly white office for the most part. And if you start getting into those conversations with them, it's gonna be on some listen. Don't talk to me. Don't say hi. Don't say because I don't even want to. I don't even like you as a person now. So let's just avoid that and keep a nice cordial work environment. So I don't want to have to hate you for you saying something ridiculous or something racially insensitive, and then I can't erase that from my head. Just a quick example of that: I unfriended an old coworker of mine from that I used to work with in Nashville for exactly that. It was a Colin Kaepernick discussion I was having on one of my posts, and he said something ridiculous, and I gave it to him. And a bunch of other people on that post gave it to him, and I quickly unfriended him, and that was that. So that was the whole situation. That was why I didn't involve my talk about stuff like that when I was working in Tennessee. Now, the office I work in is majority Black and brown. So we actually have conversations like this quite often, because it's kind of like-minded people there. The office I work in now is actually the white people are actually the minority in my particular office. So if they want to talk about something, I'd be like, nah, you should probably chill because y'all outnumbered here. And it's gonna be a real ugly work environment for y'all if you say something crazy. So they're very good at staying in their lane, because they know that they're grossly outnumbered by the minorities in our office. But we talk about different things all the time. It's pretty open in that aspect. And I work with a lot of younger people too, so it's always good to kind of get their take on different things, as far as these social injustices. And actually, before we started our discussion just now, I was going back and forth with some coworkers of mine on a group thread that we have, and we were having this discussion, and I was like, oh, I'm actually about to be on a Zoom call about this, exactly what we're talking about right now. So so that's my experience now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting when you said your environment, you're in a minority. I haven't really been in that situation since I was in customer service at a very, very young age. Most of my career has been only me or one or two kind of like me. So look, man, I play the game. I know how it works. Lois, I saw your face. You're like, oh, you go to dinner. Yeah. And my wife, this is against everything in her fabric because she's this is how it is. I don't really like how to tell the show. So, she'll ask me all the time, like, I got some very good Sixers box tickets somewhere, and I might have to. I can't go like a normal fan. I gotta wear a blazer and stuff like that. And so she'll go, "Are we going to be?" She calls it being the ink spot. Oh, is this one of these situations where we're going to be the ink spot? When she says ink spot, she means it's going to be me, her, and nothing else. And I was like, yeah, we'll probably be the ink spot.
Probably.
Yeah.
And so that makes her very, very uncomfortable. But I'm just kind of Desmond, in school, do these conversations come up? You work in a monetary private school. Do these conversations come up?
Yeah. So at at a friend's school, the conversations, they do come up. But if you're talking about at college, then no, they don't come up. And I think in college, I do go to Arcadia University, and actually, there's not a lot of Black or brown people on campus. I think it's like maybe 75% are white, and then the other 25% are people of color. And people of color, that means like Asian, that means Black, that means Indian. So I don't really know the real percentage of Black people specifically, but I do know that it's low. And so even though our president, we got a new president this year, and he is Indian, and so he's been trying to enforce a lot of radical change. And I have heard that the professors do back him up, but at the same time, I really don't see anything getting done. And I understand that there was other issues that he had to deal with first, because they were having budgeting cuts, they were laying off professors, so it was a whole thing that was happening in his transition. But I'm hoping for this upcoming year that he'll really put his attention to inclusion and diversity practices. So I mean, we do have a diversity office. It's only made up of 2 people: the president, or whatever, the diversity president, whatever you want to call her, and her assistant. So it's a very small office, and there's not a lot of activity there either. We do have some type of, we do have groups and stuff like that. We have affinity groups, but the other issue, but that's my own personal issue, is because I am a commuter, and their meetings are like at 9 o'clock at night, and so I can't really go to those because I'm just tired by that. Just tired. Plus I work too, so I can't do it. So like I said, so at school, I want to see more at Arcadia. Like I want to see more of diversity next year. But if we're talking about at the Friends School, there is a lot of conversation about race. And it's critical that there is conversation about race, because you have educators, and those educators and those teachers, they have, Black and brown children in their classes, and they have, diverse children in their classes. So it's really critical for them to talk about it. So before, actually, I wasn't a big person who talked about race, especially at the Friends School. I really wasn't. I think it was really because of I was quiet, and plus I was in my own head. I was dealing with processing everything, and so it was a lot for me to process it, and then it's even more if you ask me to help you process it on top of that. So that was a couple years ago. Now I'm starting to get a little bit better with it. I'm trying to. I think my approach right now, my lens right now, is to educate and to send out resources. And so I do my best to send out different articles that I've read, teaching podcasts as well, and things like that. And you can take it or you can leave it. When I do send those resources, but for the most part, they do accept it and they're appreciative. So yeah.
Good. there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of rebellion going on right now, right? Some might call it riots, others say rebellion that are taking place across the country, and Wilmington's Wilmington's not any different than anywhere else, right? So I'm just putting on your screen. You know, a lot of these are kind of right up the street or on the corner of where I work. But a lot of places I eat lunch at, the whole nine.
Wow.
Wilmington was got hit pretty good last night.
Wow.
Your thoughts on this is Delaware Online, just kind of some of this is the Market Street Mall, for those that are familiar. Dre, is this helpful? You know, why are people going mad?
Yeah. So I guess my thoughts are, if you're really looking for change and transformation, I think it has to be something that is much more strategic. You know, and so as you look at some of the biggest protests that happened, you know, just over the many decades, I think the ones that were more organized and just had several steps to them, I thought those actually made more transformative, I should just say just more change. So I understand some of the frustration, don't get me wrong, but I think the message is easily twisted. As soon as you start rioting and there's violence, it makes it so easy to take, it makes it so easy for the person who do not agree with your message, they can easily twist it as soon as they start seeing violence and they start seeing, you know, all this vandalism right there. We're not even talking about the issue anymore. We're talking about those thugs. We're talking about that violence. We're talking about this. So there's that part of it. And the other part of it is I've seen a few videos now where the persons that are breaking up the windows were not black. Okay. And so you got to believe, you know what? I really feel that there are racist organizations that are so organized right now. They are unbelievably organized. So if they can put on a mask and hold an umbrella and be totally cloaked and start breaking up windows and then bounce and then dip, now it just looks like, oh, see those guys? They're unruly. They're outlaws, you know? And so I think what we have to do is we have to get some organized movements going on so that we can actually make a change. And I'm not going to hit it on it now because it might be a question you ask later, which is, okay, well, what is our next move? But
that's going to be coming up.
I figure. So I'm not going to hit on that now. But again, I think we have to get organized. So I'll leave it right there.
So
why are you tearing down your own communities?
So I read a quote. I don't know the attribution, so I'll just say it, and I'm paraphrasing it here. But basically, it was riots are the language of the unheard of disenfranchised. Like this is the culmination of years and years and years of not listening to people. So you know, people say this is not the right way to affect change, but we tried it peacefully, and nothing happened. Right? Like no one listens until there's a fire, until there's a loss of property. Like people have, I mean, just since the pandemic, what are we at now? Like five black people murdered by police. Is it 5? Is that the number? So, like, if we got 6 without bubbling up and boiling over, will we have a conversation about this? A substantive conversation? Like, I don't think so. Like you look at the civil rights movement. You got black people in their Sunday best with dogs on it, with water cans on it. Like there isn't a way to dress up. There isn't a way to conduct yourself. There isn't a way to present these beefs, these arguments to people who don't give a crap about us.
So Louis, I'm gonna pick on you because you got the mic now. What about black on black crime? You're more likely to die from a black person killing a white person.
Yes, I am.
What about that?
Because crime in all of its forms, but particularly violent crime, is an action of proximity. So people tend to commit crimes against the people who live around them. So if you look at the uniform crime report that comes out from the FBI every year, white people are overwhelmingly murdered by other white people. Black people are overwhelmingly murdered by other black people because that's who they tend to live around and associate with. So until we call crime, all of it, by the ethnic background of the perpetrator, black on black crime is propaganda. It's meant to stigmatize black people.
I always wonder why it's always, but I've never heard the term Hispanic on Hispanic crime.
You don't hear white on white crime,
white on white crime, or white on white crime.
Black on black crime.
Yeah.
Kyle, don't all lives matter?
You know, I'm so glad you asked me this, because I was just having this conversation, and I'm so tired of hearing that question. Don't all lives matter? Well, of course all lives matter, but it doesn't seem like Black lives matter. So though you say, oh, well, all lives matter. Well, of course all lives matter. All lives absolutely matter. But wait a second. When you look at what's going on, when you look at the tone of our society, when you look at things that are happening, it doesn't appear as if all lives matter, because Black lives don't matter. So if you take one whole culture, one whole race of people whom lives don't matter, then all lives do not matter. And the whole Black Lives Matter movement is based on exactly that. The fact that you're saying all lives matter, but that's not what we're seeing. We don't see that our lives matter. So we need to remind everyone that Black lives matter. We understand that all lives matter, but you guys don't understand that that's not what we see, and that's not what is taking place. So Black lives matter as well, is how I would is how I answer that question. Of course, all lives matter, but Black lives matter too, and that's not what we see.
Yeah, when someone wears F cancer, or something, my father-in-law died from pancreatic cancer, so we support the pancreatic cancer. F cancer or free cancer. No one says, what about LAS? What about ALS? What about AIDS? What about congestive heart failure? No one says that. You just say, yes, we should rid the world of cancer. But no one asks about, what about all the other diseases? What about high blood pressure? What about diabetes? No one says that. Never we talk about something that's Black. It's always, well, what about everybody else? What about way back? Like I said, in my high school, we started a minority coalition, and we had our own group. Why you have a secluded group? I'm sorry. We make up 2% of the population. If we want to get together and have a conversation, does that really need to be explained? You have 98% of the population.
Yeah, exactly.
The group is you, and that's what people don't understand. You are. Why is it African American? Why is it Black History Month? I'm sorry. This is your history. Because the history isn't represented, we've identified a time that we can focus on that. So those things, because there's questions out there, but they annoy me because it annoys it obvious.
Can I piggyback off of that for just a second? Yeah. Because what you said just reminded me of a conversation I had with a guy way back in my in my college years when I was living in Virginia, and I was working at the amusement park. I was working at Paramount Kings Dominion, and I worked security there. And this other guy, of course, myself and two of my best friends, two of my line brothers actually worked security as well. And we were probably three of very few African Americans that worked at the park, but that worked in security as well. And so we were talking one day, and him and his brother went to, I can't remember what school they went to, but they went to another area college. And they were asking me, about, well, why, what made you join a Black fraternity? And I was like, well, for starters, I attend an HBCU. So those are the only fraternities that are there because that represents our culture as a student at an HBCU. And he said, well, if I wanted, so let's say I wanted to join your fraternity, could I join your fraternity?
But you don't. Why are we having this conversation?
I said, well, listen. I said,
No.
if you were a student at my university, we would not discriminate against you joining our fraternity. However, let me first tell you that African American fraternities and sororities were created because we weren't able to join the fraternity. He was in one of those popular white fraternities. I think it was like TKE or one of those.
TKE.
Yeah. And I was like, well, historically we weren't able to, just like a lot of things, we weren't able to join those type of organizations. And a lot of times weren't even able to attend those colleges. So that was one of the main reasons why historically black colleges and universities were created. And these historically black fraternities and sororities were created because we wanted our own organizations, because we were unable to participate in those type of things, back then. So as, per our tradition, per our culture, we join and we take part in these organizations. Unlike you guys, I know white signals. I've met white alphas. We don't discriminate like we were discriminated against back in the day. So that just kind of reminded me of a conversation that I had with this guy when I was in college back. It's like we can't have anything without it being questioned, but we can't be a part of what you have either. So we kind of like caught in the middle. Well, why do you need your own this, or why do you need your own that? Well,
don't join ours, but yeah, you don't need your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was Lewis's point. Colin Kaepernick effectively had his career ended because of his peaceful protest. But now the favorite thing that everyone is saying is protest. Yeah. Now, I'll start by saying I don't think that that physical rebellion against things in our neighborhood are the answer. But you can't play both sides, right? You can't, and that's my issue. You can't play both sides. You can't say do this or do that, and you have a problem with them both. And the fact that the NFL had the audacity to release a statement,
seriously,
is one of the more ridiculous things I've ever seen.
So wild.
Hollow, so hollow.
It's like, seriously? With a straight
face? Like what? Yeah.
Really? Okay, yeah. You do? Yeah, okay. So that is always very interesting. Desmond, the young man, you saw what took place in Philly last night.
What's still going on in Philly?
What's your take?
What's still going on in Philly?
8 o'clock curfew.
Yep, 8 o'clock curfew. I have to agree with Dr. Dre. I don't really think that the protests are organized enough. And I think that, the media can easily twist, the headlines, for, the people to see. So, I understand that people are angry. I understand people are upset. But, protests and, just, physical violence, breaking in, looting, I understand that, you raise your point that America was built on that, but at the same time, you're continuing, that legacy, right? And so is that really what you want to continue America to be known as? And I understand that, we did it peacefully, and, people didn't listen. But I still think that, even though did do it peacefully and people did not listen, I still think that that's better than what's happening now.
Yeah, and it's a system of fair of what's fair, right? Sporting Goods in Wilmington doesn't really have anything to do with Indianapolis, so they probably shouldn't have had all the windows broken out, right? So it all depends, But that's not to say that here's what the issue is, right? Charges weren't filed until things like this happened. Right?
See, that's the thing.
I was listening to
Yeah.
one of the shows I like to listen to on the POTUS channel on Sirius FM. I listened to a guy named Michael McComas. But anyway, he had a former FBI director on, and he just kind of just tore apart some of the things. So what I said, I stole from him. That even if Mr. Floyd had been carrying a TV and a choke, nothing, even if he had a weapon, even if he shot someone, nothing would have justified because the situation was under control. But the other thing he said was the precedent is horrible. Because of their slow response, there was rebellion, and then the response to that rebellion was to file charges, right? So that gives the impression that unless you raise hell, unless you raise holy,
that's the only way you'll get answers.
We'll get them, right?
Absolutely.
These things happen after people took to the streets. Now, I don't think that you should take to the streets, but that's the precedent that's being set. If you do the right thing, you look at we didn't have time to get into this, but you look at Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, right? This happened in February, right? And we're in May, and at the point in time where this became public knowledge,
Well, and it's the same with the Breonna Taylor situation.
Yeah, it's just like
because of
those people still haven't been arrested.
Haven't been, so people, when they're left, when people feel hopeless, of course, you have knuckleheads that crime opportunities will always exist, right? But you can do your part by responding quickly. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Dre, you were going to get into this the last time around, but what's the answer? What do we do? All right, we talked about all this. What's the answer?
So I feel like I've been thinking about this for a few years, and I'm certainly not the expert on this, but these are some things that I would like to see happen. I would like, if there's a complaint that's filed, I feel like it should almost always be an independent reviewer that's looking at the case instead of the police looking into it themselves. And I feel like that process should be transparent. Okay. And so I think that's one thing that has to happen. I think we didn't even get into Amy Cooper today. If someone puts out a false report, I think there should be criminal charges for that.
Yes,
okay?
Absolutely.
And if someone files a false report and they bring race into it, well, that should be a hate crime. All right. So those are some laws that I think need to change. And then there's things, because I'm not the expert, there's some things that you don't know what you don't know. And so when it comes to the court cases, I keep on hearing these court cases where the jury could not hear this piece of evidence, and I don't know enough about law to understand that, but I feel as though there ought to be some more transparency to what the jurors are allowed to hear when it comes to some of these court cases. And the last thing that I think that I would like to see is people in the police force in the community ought to reflect the community. There should be a percentage that reflects the community. So those are some things I would love to have happen. And I'm not saying that's a plan. I'm just saying I would love to see those things transpire, because I feel as though without those things transpiring, we're going to keep on hearing "I can't breathe" a few months from now, a year from now, and years from now, until these guys are held accountable. I like what my man Lewis was saying and Kyle was saying earlier. He had his hands in his pocket very casual laying on him. And I think until there's a threat, once they have that, Mikkel, the same that they had, I'm sorry, not Mikkel, it was Kyle. The cop came up on you, he was trembling in fear. I want them to have that same fear when they doing something wrong.
Yep. And in order to do that, everyone, so I'm going to piggyback on you, DeAndre. I feel like there should be accountability for people. So states have rushed to put on books that if a crime was committed, were part of that crime, every person that was there can be charged with murder. If we go to rob a store and it's the 5 of us and that person dies, they can charge all 5 of us with murder. We had not participated, they wouldn't have done it. I feel like everyone, so in that particular case, there were 3 other officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the knock we always hear against the Black community is we could solve crimes if you would just tell us who did it. The whole don't snitch culture, but yet you operate by the same don't
Same
snitch culture.
culture.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Exact
such a good
culture
point. Oh
that
my
you are
gosh.
pointing to for the Black
Yes.
community. So I
Yes.
feel like
That is such a good point.
everyone should
Right.
be held accountable, whether
Should
they
be the
raised the
example.
baton or not. And I think if we get to that, people, it'll erase the blue code, and people will start if they feel like they can be not only fired but charged with a crime.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care whose knee was on there. It was 4 of you standing there. You're all getting charged with the same crime.
Exactly.
Like that
Exactly.
Yeah.
will create people to have some degree of accountability. That's my
Mm-hmm.
kind of my solution. Louis, what do you think should be done?
I think
the answer.
I think a whole host of these things of things can be done, and all the suggestions you all made make perfect sense. But none of this stuff happens unless you can make people understand the importance of voting and voting locally and voting every time,
I was
and
gonna say
making
I
people
was gonna go
accountable
there. Yeah.
for not being responsive to the needs of your community. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the things that routinely happen, like the abuses that routinely happen to Black people in Black communities, happen in the white community, they're not marching. They're going to tell the mayor or the governor that you're going to be a one-term politician unless you fix this shit. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You got to fix this, or
Yeah.
we're going to come in and we're going to vote you out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
until African Americans understand the power of their vote, they're happy for us to apply for permits to march. They're okay with us rioting every 10 years in response to ridiculous treatment.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that's the only way to fix it. And to be quite frank, I'm not even sure that'll fix it. Like the country was built on these standards, on these codes, on racism, Black bodies, Black trauma. I don't see it changing. I just don't see it changing.
Yeah.
So,
man, sobering. Kyle, what do you think?
Well, I agree. Just to kind of piggyback off of Dr. Dre, we need to organize. And one thing, this kind of piggybacks off of what Dr. Dre was saying, as well as what Lewis was just saying, is what I'm here in New Jersey. The mayor of Newark spoke yesterday at their rally or at their protest. I will say for Newark, considering how wild that city can get, their protests stayed mainly peaceful for the most part. Some people got a little sideways, but it stayed mainly peaceful. It didn't get as out of hand as some of the other big cities across the country. But one thing he said that I thought was very interesting was he tried to appeal to a lot of the young people that were out there, a lot of the people who were, a lot of the kids about to graduate from high school, a lot of the kids just started or going into college, young people like Desmond and stuff like that, which kind of goes along with organizing, is just getting people in the right positions. And that piggybacks on to what Lewis was saying as far as voting. We need to be so much more organized in how we vote locally, because that is a ripple effect into the policies and things of that nature that get going in our community. And in return, just like when you throw a rock into a pond or a lake, it ripples to it goes from the municipal level to the city level or state level, national level, federal level, things of that nature. We need to get people in the right positions. We need to get people into the decision-making positions because this thing is systemic. So in order to get past this systemic thing that's affecting us, we need to affect the system. So trying to get into local politics, just trying to make a change in that aspect, while also I also very much agree with Dr. Dre as far as there needs to be way more transparency with these police departments, with these DA's offices, there's so much stuff that we don't know, because not because we don't know, it's because it gets hidden, or it gets it gets covered up. So
Yeah.
we don't really know. We might as well have blindfolds on, because we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, because they're hiding things, they're covering things up, and so in order for us to get anywhere with this, it starts with there being transparency. There needs to be some um outside arbiters reviewing these different things, not the police. Just like y'all were just saying, they govern themselves with the same culture that the hood governs themselves with the no snitching, or blue lives, or whatever that all of that is. So they're not gonna tell on their fellow officers. There need to be outside people coming in conducting these investigations. So I think kind of what Lewis said. That the sad fact is this is going to happen again. It's going to take a long time for it to be any change. But these are some of the ways that we can kind of start to affect change, and try to get into figuring out how we're going to make things make things better. There's a reason that these things have been going on for over 400 years.
Yeah.
So it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. So one of the things I saw from Valerie Jarrett on Twitter, senior advisor to President Obama, but she said, if you could have the entire world's attention for 1 minute, what would you say? What would be your thoughts? So Desmond, the whole world is listening. What would you say to them?
Other than what all of the brothers have said, that's one part that I would have said. I think the only other thing that I would like to add really is we need to start having these critical conversations. And I know, some people are uncomfortable with it, but we need to start the dialogue. And I'm not even worried about, perfection, the way that you talk and the way that you express things with people. But I think just starting there and just starting the dialogue, I think would be really impactful and really helpful. Because our black boys and girls, they have conversations with their black parents. And I want to see the same thing with white families. I want to see white families having dialogue with their own children, with their kids, expressing, racism and difference. There's a lot of different ways that you can express this with children, and they'll, understand it. You have to work with them to understand it. But honestly, you can't really start it if you don't also start with yourself first. And I think that's the biggest obstacle, is people don't want to have these conversations. They don't want to look within themselves and ask themselves, why am I like this, or why do I have this certain opinion, and where did it come from? And until people really start to have a change of hearts and change of minds, the one way that I know that who can change your heart and change your mind is Jesus. But if you don't have him, then I really don't know where to begin. I really don't know how you can begin that process of changing your heart and changing your mind. But until people do that, I think it'll still be the same, just like how Lewis said. I don't know if I'll real change.
Yeah. For me, the people, what I would say is, until the people not impacted are as mad as the people impacted, it'll continue to exist. Black people, we should organize, we should do everything, but it will take more than us to make systematic change. I think one thing the gay community did very well is this whole ally thing, right? We know you're not gay, but just be our ally, right? Support us. And I think that's what we need. We need allies, right? We need people who don't look like us to be just as mad as us and to support us, because that'll put pressure on their peers. That's how we begin to to affect change, right? Dr. King had JFK, right? It's not things into, Lyndon Johnson's son, the Civil Rights Act, right? So, we need allies. We need people that are willing to take the political heat and to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What would you say if you had everyone's attention?
If I had the world's attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is really just that scripture that love never fails. And I think some people see love as something that's small, but I look at love as an action word, So, I love the quote that life begins to end when you are silent about the things that matter. And so love means speaking out against those things that are important, that are happening to people, and standing strong with those who are disenfranchised and vulnerable and otherwise poorly represented. I always look to someone like Harriet Tubman. She showed that true, agape, unconditional, selfless love. Even when she was free, she went back to those who were not free. And sometimes that's going to take some selflessness. And you have to be able to go out of your comfort zone and be able to go up to somebody to be able to help them out. And that's a love thing. It takes love for that. And so I think if the world has my attention, I think right now we need more love, but change the way you think about love. It's not for wimps. Love is an action word. I'll leave it there.
All right, Lewis, everyone's listening. It's like, all right.
The whole world is listening?
The whole world's listening.
Like, before I speak to the world, I want to tell y'all, this has been a beautiful experience. Y'all are all beautiful. Y'all are all super intelligent, super articulate, positive Black men. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with y'all. I want to tell y'all that I care about your lives and about your dreams and your aspirations. It's all important to me, and I love you. I don't know y'all except for Mikhail and Christy, but y'all are all important to Mikhail and important enough to be on here, so that means you're important to me. So I feel connected.
Right back at you, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Amen.
But I guess I'm way more cynical than the rest of y'all. So if I had the world's attention, I would just give him my Cash App. You could hit me at Lewis Lamar 3. Because I don't really think anybody's going to make any real changes. So, you don't even got to hit me off with a lie. Just break me off with $1 or something.
The whole world. Yeah, $1 coming from everybody in the world. That's
you know
that's
what I mean?
Hey, yeah, that's something, right? That's a good little piece of change right there.
Yeah, that's Jeff Bezos' money right there.
So, and then I'll just disappear. I'm not Harriet. God bless Harriet, but I'm not.
You ain't gonna worry about me coming back, right?
I'm not coming back, man. I can't help y'all. I'm sorry.
So Kyle, last thoughts. What would you have to say?
It's I would really just tell the world to just pay attention to what's happening, because even people who feel like they can't connect, injustice anywhere it affects justice everywhere. It's a direct threat to justice everywhere. So even if you feel like you're of a different race and it doesn't really you can't connect with being a Black man or woman or being a brown man or woman, pay attention and have those uncomfortable conversations. Just to kind of piggyback off of what Des and DeAndre was saying, man, like, one thing that we need to do is people need to kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit. And that's why, though I'm not, I'm completely against like all the property damage and property destruction, this type of stuff gets people's attention. And so once you have the world's attention, we need to have these dialogues. We need to have these conversations to slowly start to affect change. Granted, a lot of people, if you can't connect, you may feel uncomfortable, but you need to be a little uncomfortable, because guess what? I'm always uncomfortable. Everybody that we're on this discussion with right now, we're always uncomfortable. we're uncomfortable the minute. Desmond even said it, and I do the same thing, Des. I pray before I step out the door because our mere presence is uncomfortable to so many. It makes us uncomfortable. So, if you can't connect with that, have that conversation, have those dialogues, because without it, nothing definitely will ever change.
Brothers, I just want to thank you all so much. I piggyback on what Lewis said. I mean, thank you for taking the time and plan on your weekend, have this conversation. What desire was just to hear some men perspectives, and you gave us that. To the Gummies, as she called them, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you like what you heard. And I encourage everyone watching to have these conversations wherever you are. And we can, all we can hope to do is affect change together. All right. Thank you, guys.